So hi, everybody. God, this is like teaching. All right, you all. Hey, that's better. So I've been asked, first of all, to say thank you for being here. And I'm going to keep saying thank you until people slow down and start hearing me. So there we go. All right, so as you circulate around, the first thing I need to do is simply say thank you. Thank you for sharing your time, your talents, and yes, your treasure with San Diego State. And we create this for you, and we create it because it's super fun. And hopefully we'll live up to that latter part. First thing I need to ask you to do, though, is to invite one of my colleagues to say a few words. And so if you can direct your attention to the video screen.
Hello, I'm Sandy, SDSU's Virtual Engagement Officer. I'm an AI-powered avatar, created to help create connections with our amazing SDSU community, and I'm thrilled to welcome you. We're delighted to have you join us for tonight's Tower Society Appreciation event. First and foremost, thank you, our Tower Society members, for your generous support and commitment to San Diego State University. Your dedication makes a lasting impact on our students, faculty, and the future of our institution. We are deeply grateful for all you do. Tonight's program, AI in the Human Experience, explores an important and timely topic. We hope you enjoy the conversation and encourage you to participate by sharing your questions. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Adrian Vargas, President and CEO of the Campanile Foundation and Vice President of University Relations and Development.
Good evening, everyone. We hope you enjoyed meeting Sandy, the first ever virtual engagement officer. Sandy joined us this past January as part of an exciting pilot project aimed at expanding our outreach and deepening our engagement with more alumni and our Aztec community. He's a unique member of our team and a notable example of how SDSU is innovating with purpose. Welcome back to campus, and thank you so much for being here tonight for this special gathering focused on the topic that is shaping our shared future. We're honored to be joined by such a diverse and generous community of supporters. Your philanthropy reaches every area of our campus, from the arts to the sciences, from student scholarships to pioneering research. Whether you're supporting student athletes, advancing healthcare, empowering first-generation students, or fueling discovery and innovation, your support is changing lives every day. On behalf of the SDSU community, thank you. As you know, SDSU is a proud member of the California State University system, and we are actively engaged in the CSU AI initiative, a bold system-wide commitment to preparing students, faculty, and communities for a future shaped by artificial intelligence. But this effort is about far more than just technology. It's about ethical leadership, inclusive innovation, and ensuring that AI serves the greater good. One powerful example of this vision in action is the James Silberrad Brown Center for Artificial Intelligence. Thanks to the generosity of the Brown family, SDSU is now home to a state-of-the-art hub for AI research and interdisciplinary collaboration. The center is not only advancing the science of AI, but also exploring how it intersects with education, health, the arts, and society at large. After the program, we invite you to visit the James Silberrad Brown Center for AI table, where you'll have the chance to meet Asher, who is one of the interactive robots and unofficial mascot of the center. I met Asher just prior to coming in here. Built by students, Asher is a key tool for the center's research, particularly in areas like human-robot interaction, cybersecurity, and mixed reality technologies. There are also staff from the College of Arts and Letters and the Global Campus sharing highlights of their AI programs. Tonight you'll hear from a distinguished panel of faculty members shaping insights into the evolving landscape of AI and the profound questions it raises about who we are and who we want to be as a society. To get us started, it's my pleasure to introduce a leader whose vision is taking SDSU to the next level. Please join me in welcoming President Adela De La Torre.
Thank you, Adrienne. I'm just so pleased to see so many familiar faces, and I want to thank you for everything you do for SDSU. You know, I'm extremely excited because in 6 days, we are going to have a record number of students at SDSU. We had almost 123,000. In fact, was it 123,000 applications? We were debating. We're going to have the largest freshman class we've ever had. We had about 95,000 students apply to be freshmen at SDSU this year. And when you think about that, we are going to have about 6,800 freshmen and about 4,000 transfer students. And as you can see, the construction, if you've noticed the housing construction, we are building with Evolved because we need to bring in more housing for our students. The idea of the housing is that over time, with the uncertainty of the cost of attendance with real estate prices, we need to make it as affordable as possible. I want to thank you about something that to me is incredibly special, and that is that 75% of our students graduate without any debt. And that this year, we were at, 99.9% distribution of all scholarship funds. That means that your dollars go immediately to our students, and our students walk out with the careers that they need. I also want to give a shout out to our Career Services Director, Danny Newell, because we were able to raise more money through grants and contracts for our career services so that we actually have a larger career services budget than UC Berkeley. And that's my alma mater, so you know, hey. So my point here is, when I look at what we are doing in terms of our campus, and when I still see ourselves in the top 10 public institutions of interest, and even today, we can say not only do we have a tremendous representation of California students, but we can actually say today we have representation of students from all 50 states. In fact, kind of a funny thing that people send me now, they think, but I actually love it because I pass it on. I will get pictures of students with backpacks. I got one from Manhattan around Greenwich Village. I got another one from New Orleans. And it just speaks to the fact, and then I had coffee with a major CEO who had just come back from London. He said, you know what, Della, San Diego State is internationally known. The fact is that we have broken so many different barriers and expectations because you've believed in us, and I want to thank you again for that. But more importantly, we've had the vision of leadership from our faculty, a willingness to take risk, such that I think not only did we achieve R1 status, but we're going to achieve even more within the AI front. I say that because it's because of the faculty that I'm actually going to be teaching this fall in the College of Education, but I've used AI, Copilot specifically, to help generate my own syllabus and my assignments. And indeed, I will be using it and proactively with the students. I'll be teaching a graduate class on higher education, focusing it from a practitioner's perspective, a president. And the course will be aimed for graduate students, the 15 lucky graduate students who will enroll in the class. And I say lucky because I was worried I wouldn't get 15 students, but it appears that I did. And that I'll be doing that with the idea and an eye of how to use AI responsibly in a way that allows them to amplify their ability to provide skills, their skill set, their leadership skill set at a higher level. So I'll tell you how my evaluations come after the course. But I have to tell you, I am worried. 6 days from now, I am very worried. It's been a while. Okay, so now I want to turn to why we really are here today, and that is because we are going to have this wonderful panel, AI and the Human Experience. And I think everybody knows AI has become the forefront. In fact, I just read about open AI being one of the most, in terms of, I know, billions and billions of dollars, becoming the most important company in the world, right? But more importantly, it's not an option for our students here at SDSU. It isn't an option for our faculty even at SDSU. And more importantly, we early on have not only initiated training for faculty, students, and staff and parents, but we also have made a commitment that all of our majors will be trained in AI for the summer. And we've done that through providing, recognizing the time faculty spend by providing them a stipend, but also providing the support they need as a retrofit. I'm using the term retrofit because I had a retreat with the chairs today and there was a presentation. They choose the term retrofit their own curriculum such that the pedagogy can be attuned to this new technology. So I'm very proud, and I just want to say that we are going to have a very exciting panel. It will be led by Dean Todd Butler, our Dean of the College of Arts and Letters, and he will introduce our panelists and moderate this discussion. So Todd, take it away.
So hi again. As she said, I'm Todd Butler. This is my first year at SDSU. I arrived here last year and have been excited and impressed by the range of colleagues. I can only second the idea that SDSU has an international reputation. I was in the Coliseum this summer with my 2 kids and my wife, recouping our honeymoon trip, and across the way, someone yelled, "Go Aztecs" to me because I had a cap on. So y'all are everywhere in that regard. And I'm glad you're here with us tonight. The aim really for this was to have a conversation, to have the best of a kind of seminar and a class. It's better than most of the classes we offer because there's better food. There's no grading that comes along with it, just good conversation. And I should say, shouldn't just be conversation with me or the 3 people that are up here. We have multiple deans here in the audience. If you would give a raise of your hand, come on y'all. Out of that, part of the reason why I mention this is because AI, although we'll be talking about it here, is as our president said, is moving through all of our curricula and areas. We're thinking about how AI is managing and moving in healthcare information, designing new materials, charting out new pathways to learn, to work, and then also how we're helping society think through what to do with these things. You'll also see, and I'd encourage you, if you didn't stop by before, outside there will be tables of not only information, but faculty leaders who are working with this that are here to answer your questions. So the conversation doesn't just exist up here. It exists afterwards. Stop us, keep us going, keep us late. If you want, not too late, because I'll get in trouble from the organizers, but we do really want this to be a genuine conversation. There are folks from the Silberrad Center, from SDSU's global campus that provides a micro-credential in AI, and then also faculty from my college, which this fall is initiating SDSU's first undergraduate degree in artificial intelligence. And it is distinctive nationally and not just at SDSU because it exists in the College of Arts and Letters. Its title is a BS, a Bachelor of Science in Artificial Intelligence and Human Responsibility. I want that to sink in a little bit because one of the responsibilities of a public institution is to understand not just how things work, but how they work within the world. Not only what we can do with something, but when, whether, and even if we should use technology in that. Thank you. And I should say, the other thing that I'm excited about, and it's representative of all the brain power that we have at this university, is that degree last year went from conceptualization to submission in 3 weeks. With apologies to our friends in Northern California, in Silicon Valley, SDSU is showing that we can not only move fast, but we can make things here. And we are responsive to the needs of our communities, our students, and the wider good of San Diego and beyond that we serve. And that's why today's focus for our panel is actually on not just AI, but AI and the human experience. Many of you submitted questions that I've tried to synthesize, and I didn't just use AI to synthesize them. I thought about them for a while. They're really an exceptional range of questions, and I'm going to weave some of those into the conversation, but we're also going to do this conversation a little bit differently. We have 3 general categories that we're going to start with. AI and broadly in society. What's AI going to mean then also for education? In particular, what's happening here on campus? And also looking ahead to the future. But after every one of those segments, we're going to pause for a second, 2 or 3, and ask if there's any kind of follow-up questions that you want to jump in and ask, because the main frame of a conversation is not to wait 40 minutes until the 4 talking heads on the stage have said their piece, but to be able to follow up right then. We'll certainly still have questions and time for questions at the end, but be prepared. If there's something that's on your head that you wanted to follow up that we didn't get your question right, or that we didn't know where we wanted to go, or it sparked an idea, that's what this is. This is a conversation for you and with you. So to help us, I have one real quick question. I'd like to know, by show of hands, how many of you have actually consciously used AI in the last 6 months? Okay. Now, for all those people who have their hands up, or even if you don't, how many of you know how it gave you the answer it gave you? Okay. All right. That's helpful for us to calibrate ourselves. And people will bring the microphone over to you if you have further questions, but you also got to practice. You know how. Now I know you know how to raise your hand for all this. Please also help yourself to food and beverages. There, during the reception afterwards, there'll be opportunities to engage my fellow deans, our leaders here, ask us the kind of specific questions you wanted to answer. And so AI really truly is an interdisciplinary endeavor, and we're featuring a bit of that collaboration right here. So I want to introduce our panelists then. First is Robert Beverly. He is the director of the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence and professor in the Department of Computer Science in the College of Sciences. The second is Aaron Elkins, who'll be coming up. Y'all can take your spots. Aaron is the director of the James Silberrad Brown Center for AI and associate professor of Management Information Systems Department in the Fowler College of Business. And then Jessica Pressman is the co-founder of SDSU's Digital Humanities Initiative and professor in the Department of English and Comparative Literature in the College of Arts and Letters. So let's get started, y'all. So, and I should say, we had lunch together today, and it was super fun. And I would have this conversation for a long time, but I did preview them, and previewed Aaron in particular, that I wanted to start to ground us in a basic, let's say 30-second definition of what's AI? What is it, and how should we be kind of thinking about this phrase that we hear a lot? But let's put some conversation into exactly what is it?
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. So AI is kind of a buzzword. Before we called AI, we were calling it big data. And before we were calling it big data, when I was a student here at SDSU, we called it business intelligence. It really reflects the state of the art of technology. And right now, we're really good at these neural networks that kind of copy a human anatomy in the brain. And we can use these really cool graphics cards that we use for gaming primarily to speed them up. That's why NVIDIA is so popular. So AI kind of, if we just make it historically, and I'll keep this brief, it goes back to maybe in the 50s, I mean earlier philosophically, but in the 50s, Herbert Simon, he developed this in the economics department. They used to be the kings of AI. He took logic, Aristotle and logic, and he said, okay, what if we made a computer program that can make new facts out of existing facts using propositional logic? And then fast forward, every time there's a new kind of innovation, that's like what's the AI. But just to give you kind of a working definition that I like, it's this sort of the apex of all the technology brought together, and right now that's computing, and future maybe quantum, that it replicates or duplicates human capabilities. So it's very human. It's in our image. And it is enabling it to do things that are rational and soon maybe emotional. So it's really big copying human characteristics and encapsulating them in the modern state-of-the-art of technology.
So following up on this, and I promise that I do this, one of the things we professors like to do is argue with each other. And so I'm going to ask both Rob and Jessica, tell me something that's missing from Aaron's argument, or from Aaron's definition, that we also want to add into the conversation.
Sure. I mean, I often think of AI as a large collection of, probability distributions that are just, linked to give us some sort of, insight. These distributions are models of the world we live in. But I also like to remind students that, when we talk about AI, this could be everything from like robots that are trying to learn the environment they're working in, to, things that are making classification decisions, to things that are actually generating images or audio and video, stuff like that. So it is at the end of the day just trying to build a model of our world to give us a particular answer.
Jess?
Yeah, hi, I'm so happy to be here. And I love this question also because it turns our attention to language. I'm an English professor. Thinking about computers as language machines and AI is scraping language and text and data in that way, but also the very words artificial and intelligence and artificial and human, just to remind ourselves that those are not stable and objective and factual terms, that there's long histories and confusions and debates over what counts as intelligence and who counts as human, and when someone counts as human. So I would just add to that artificial intelligence is not just about technology, it's always about culture and human bias, which means it's always about politics and power.
And so pulling from that, I want to put forward a distinction between the artificial intelligence, the computational probabilities, the data processing, and then the experience of using it, which is as much a user interface, a personality for your robot, or the humanness of it. It feels human, which feels different. Is it worthwhile to distinguish between the computations that are going on underneath and then when it congratulates you on a great question, or when it apologizes for getting something wrong? And even the question of apology is an interesting thing because it suggests that if you feel bad, and I'm not. So how do we deal with our experience of using AI within that definition?
That's a good question. I would say that at some point we won't even have the capacity to comprehend what's happening under the hood, because what's happening at every new development is the complexity keeps increasing. And so I don't believe that it even matters at some point, that it's the experience. It's goal-directed behavior. So the robot is apologizing because it's trying to facilitate communication, and it's trying to maybe ingratiate in the same way that someone might do person to person. But no, I don't think the distinction is important, nor does it even matter once you start talking to them. So that's why I invite anyone, if you want to try it out, to maybe just talk to our robot Asher outside, and we're going to be in the library a little later if you want to try that out, and maybe decide for yourselves.
And yet I would say that interface is really also everything, right? I mean, the color of Asher's eyes, for example, the design, right? Thinking about interface and design, which is aesthetics, which is poetics, which is recognizing that, aesthetics and design are always part of technology. Certain technologies advance not because they're better, but because they're easier to use or they're prettier to use, the MacBook, for example, right? So here's again where the kind of humanities and the arts and the practices become part of this in terms of interface experience.
So I want to pull out something that you said that might have felt unsettling to some folks here, which is at some point, I think you said, at some point we may not even be capable of understanding what's going on afterwards. You're welcome. That is fascinating and gets to some questions that we got from the audience that were really fundamentally about reasonable concern leading into anxiety. And maybe I'll group them into a broad bunch of questions, which is how do we as individuals become critical consumers? How do we understand how to trust, to understand in a series of misinformation, but also maybe as a society, for any of y'all, how do we work with the technology that many of us may not be able to understand, to regulate or control or to make it accountable, or even just simply be transparent about what's happening? That seems to be a real worry, not only in this room, but across our culture. How do we do that?
So I'll just start the conversation. I mean, certainly folks have been thinking about this. I will just factually state that, for instance, the previous presidential administration had an executive order that was put out on the safety, security, and trustworthiness of AI systems, right? And there was a lot of stuff in there. It's a really interesting question, though, however, because the current administration actually rescinded that, saying that it stifled innovation, right? So there is this tension here between how fast this technology is evolving, getting the maximum benefit from it, as well as trying to make sure that we have some controls in place. And then I would also just say, as with many of these things, there's both technical and policy and regulation. All of this has to sort of come together in order to give you a complete solution.
So the one point I'd like to make is that AI is not a monolith. Mm-hmm. We often conflate what this business model and this idea of what AI is, or making AI utility and building these massive data centers. AI is a creative human creation, and it's alive at the university. It's part of what we're developing and building. And I'm not super a fan of regulation because I don't think we can even foresee where it's going, and I do believe it intends to stifle, irrespective of your political persuasion. I think the role of the academies should be to step up more and push back a bit, and that's what we're trying to do at this center, and build the technology. I mean, we built the original language model architecture that is now being capitalized. I think the reason that we built this robot the way we did is to make it trustworthy, because we want to use it in the classroom, we want to use it for healthcare, and you can't be transmitting that off to OpenAI or to whomever or having that shared. And so I think the future to take some control is open models. And so Meta has left this operation. They kind of introduced Llama, which was like the open weights models. But I think we need to push back into that and have models that we can run on our own computers. Our robot doesn't need any internet. It doesn't talk to any servers, no cloud. And you can't talk to the cloud if you're talking student records. You can't talk to the cloud if you're doing therapy. We need to trust our robots. But I think there's an alternative pathway that has nothing to do with geopolitics or corporate, that I think we at the university are really in a great position to teach and to build.
Can I say something about anxiety? Yeah, sure. I'm a media scholar and historian of media. A lot of my work is on new media. I work on digital literature. And part of my work on new media is always questioning and really critiquing what newness means. The longer histories of media history show us that there's always crisis and anxiety around new technology, and that it doesn't necessarily kill the old, or it can transform culture, but anxieties are part of this media history. So I would also say that the university is a place to teach the longer history of AI, to teach the longer ways of thinking through these issues and ethics and debates, that it's not all new and now. There are some very troubling issues today, but we look at the longer lifespan of things here in the academy, and that's why it's such an important place to be.
So let me push back along a little bit of that, because I think there's still an anxiety of, right now, I need to know if something that is coming to me is true, and I'm well aware that true is a complicated thing. Authentic is written or said by the person who wants to say it. and then is actually created by a human, which I think is another element that we're trying to work through. So when we have questions of disinformation, when we have questions of the impact of misinformation on society, how do we, you're a cybersecurity expert. People at some point don't feel secure. How do you respond to that even from an expertise frame?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple of things there. One is, of course, there are tools that have been created to detect AI-generated content. And this reminds me very much sort of this cat and mouse game that we've had, for years and years and years, where, we build a detector and then someone figures out how to build a better way to get around it, so on and so forth. And, the one thing that I would probably point to immediately is, you might remember years ago, we were all afraid to go to certain websites. We didn't know their authenticity. And then at some point, the little magical lock appeared up in the corner and you were like, oh, this is better. I mean, I think what I would say is that there is industry organizations that are using, the big, the Adobes of the world, the big content creators that are creating some of this infrastructure to have, cryptographically signed images that, this is grounded in meat space. Like someone has proved, oh, Todd, has this digital signature that I'm signing, this public key, and I'm signing this image with that, and it's verifiable, right? So I think we're going to get to the point where, folks will be able to have all of these crypto mechanisms built in to have a much better sense of trust. Now, there's a separate question of how do you, the human experience, how do you make humans understand, or, how do you keep them from being faked out? And I mean, this is the same story we had back when people were making malicious websites and things like that, right? There's a lot of education that has to go along. But I think a lot of the infrastructure is coming.
And so we're headed to education, but I'm going to pause here for a minute. This is that first pause. Have you heard anything that you want to follow up on? All right, then. Go ahead. Yep.
You're first. Thank you for this. Is this on? It's great. The question I'm going to ask, I have a sense that the answer is going to be it depends. But I'd like to get a sense about when you use AI to obtain information from something simple to something very complex, to what extent do you have to do independent research to confirm that the information you're getting is correct? That's my question.
Yeah, it's mandatory. And in fact, a lot of the newer models, the ones that are starting to become more and more common, include citations so that you can see their sources. So we're actually moving to an era where when we started with the AI craze with ChatGPT, they were trying to embed all the knowledge in its training data such that it was kind of cut off, like everything before 2024, and it doesn't know anything after. And we're actually moving into simpler models that actually pull data from the data sources. So it's less about the AI and more about the sources and where they're vetted and if those sources are agreeable. But they're doing a lot better job now of stating the actual claim, putting an in-text citation, and allowing you to go there and find it. So it is it's being more and more facilitated.
Other questions? There's one right over there, and then we'll get.
What comes into my mind is, and what I'm seeing in the society, is that critical thinking seems to be perceived now more as a negative from media and things like that, and I think that what I use when I'm looking or reading something that I know that is AI generated is I base a lot of my questions on my own critical thinking. And I'm wondering how, when you're creating AI and as it moves forward, how do we perceive critical thinking and how do we teach critical thinking about AI?
Well, I mean, I think you said something really beautiful there, which is that when you are using the tool, you are very intentionally aware of your own critical thinking capacity. And I think that's an important part of both using and teaching with AI, which is to use it as an interlocutor or as a tool or as a collaborator or co-creator rather than as the thing that you just trust, right? So I think it really is a paradigm shift of how we're thinking about these tools. And in terms of critical thinking, I think critical thinking, and especially a kind of humanities, a historical, contextual a focus on critical analysis has never been more important, ever. I get asked a lot as an English professor, like, oh no, you know, students are cheating, and what are you going to do? This clearly your job isn't important. I'm like, no, my job's never been more important, because we do need to teach people to read and write critically with and about these tools.
How about Joe?
And I'll just add one point. I think part of what we're also experiencing is less to do with the technology and more to do with the interface. These chat interfaces are just awkward. It's tedious, typing everything. It's not a dialogue. And that's the reason that I believe that robots are the future, because we can get out of this weird paradigm where we're just putting a query and then we get an answer and it's just a one-way kind of interaction. And we don't want to type all this stuff. It's fatiguing, and you don't type the way you talk. And I think once we start moving into robots in our physical world, and they're more like people, whatever, or robothood, or whatever we're going to call this new entity, then it's going to become a little more natural. And then the dialogue will be natural. And then you'll talk to it as if it was a friend who said something you didn't quite buy. And you can hear its inflection, and it can sense that you have incredulity. And it's like, okay, here's my belief. And once we have that sort of a natural way, and that we're not just typing every thought that we need to, I think it's going to come naturally, and it's going to become part of the interaction.
Okay, there's one question here, and then we'll kind of move on to the next segment.
There have been some reports of the incidence rate of falsified data in research papers going way up. And if artificial intelligence is scraping the web for all information to generate an answer, it makes me wonder how many actors are out there generating falsified data in order to sway answers to the types of questions that would affect politics and power.
Robert, you want to start us? And I'm going to refer to Robert as the cybersecurity guy who will save everything for us.
Geesh, that is a huge issue. I completely agree with you. I'm not sure I have a great answer for that question, to be honest with you.
At least in the AI field, there's no top venue, the top conferences and journals that doesn't require you to provide the data now for validation. And they also, for the most part, there's a lot of standardized data sets that they have to be validated against. So that issue is actually being addressed pretty head on now, at least in the AI field.
So moving, a lot of your comments, and in fact your questions, are moving us into the question of, so what's the role of the university? What do we do as students come here, stay with us for 4 years, and then go out and return to their communities that are there, whether it's critical thinking, whether it's knowledge. And so I think one of the frames that we're talking about is in a world that's awash in information, you can get information. How do we build understanding? Not just availability of data. And how do we have to change to do that? And so I want to ask a broader question. A lot of these questions turn around cheating. How do we catch plagiarism? But I want to pick up on what Jessica said, that may not be the most interesting question in the long run. And so let me reframe it a little bit, which is, how should our teaching or assignments or pedagogy or how we evaluate things evolve? And I'm going to use that word really specifically, evolve, both to ensure academic integrity, which is a version of research integrity, which is a version of factual integrity, but also meaningful learning in this era where AI tools are widely available to students. That genie is not going to be put back into the bottle. And so how do we balance academic integrity and really, truly meaningful learning, which is what those 40,000 students are coming here in a week to get?
Well, I'll start.
It's really much more fun to ask the questions, I have to tell you, than...
That's actually what it's about, is asking questions rather than answering them, right? I mean, the presumption that students are going to cheat means that students are only in my classes to generate content that I then evaluate and assess. What a boring idea that is in terms of education. That is not my job, is to assign things and then grade them and assess them, right? Instead, it's to prompt them to think, which means to ask questions, perhaps questions to which there are many interpretations, which means they have to come up with their own, which means they have to have a sense of their own intelligence and values and how to do research and perhaps their own style of writing. Like, writing isn't just about content generation. Writing is about self-discovery. It's about inspiration. It's about self-expression. It's about joy. So I would say, I mean, the short answer to that is, this crisis is actually an opportunity to rethink and retool, certainly for scholars and teachers, but also for our students. What is it that I really want them to get out of my classes? And in part, that's not just me being a police of their writing or of their work, but of me inspiring them to want to learn, to want to ask the questions, not to get the answers from AI, but to want to talk and learn from interesting people. And then to model that and showcase that. And that, to me, is one of the major roles of the university.
What do you all think?
I actually think this is really about pedagogy more than technology.
Yeah.
Updating our materials. The last few years teaching AI and kind of iterating on how to combat, changing my assignments. I would say that one, just to give you some basic ideas that have worked well, is you just have to make sure the assignments incorporate the perspective that is unavailable on an AI. That's an easy thing to do. Like class discussions and things that can't possibly be summarized by AI. That's just an easy low-hanging fruit. Another thing that we do is that we actually have some of these projects that we work on in class, and they develop it in person, and there's an outline and a structure they developed, and we can verify it. And then, they go in and work on it and separately and then turn something in that you have some sense that they did work to some degree on their own. The other approach that I tend to kind of favor, especially because I teach a lot of programming and development, of which there's huge productivity gains, of which we don't want them to start with AI. They need to learn how to do programming fundamentally, then they can use the tools. But the expectation going forward is that people are going to be able to do more. It's exciting. Like the stuff that AI is automating is not the funnest part of programming. The creative architecture, collaborating with this agent who's coding, and he's like your assistant and your coworker, that's what's exciting. So I think if you operate under the assumption they're using AI, then make your assignments harder and expect more and say, look, if you've got AI tools and it's boosting your productivity by 40%, then the assignments are going to be 45% more demanding or more higher, like expecting more. And that's one approach, like use AI, but these are hard assignments, you need AI. And that's how you might lean into helping them understand how to use the tools and understanding they're going to use them, and they should. But there is a time and place. I don't want them using it in the beginning, they just need to learn fundamentals.
Yeah, everything my colleagues said, and I mean, the point about critical thinking, I think, is incredibly important. I mean, I think we can all remember a time where we had a test that was like closed books or no calculators or something like that, right? And invariably, what happens is like some student buggers it up. They don't check their units. It's all garbage, even with a calculator, right? And we see the exact same thing, right? When you get the answer, you have to have some intuition, like, did these units cancel and I'm getting something that's at least the right units, for heaven's sakes, right? Am I getting a number that could plausibly be the answer to this thing? I think is like really important and something that, students learn, let's just say, the hard way, for sure. The only other thing I might jump in really quickly that I think, Aaron was alluding to was this idea of we can, I think you sort of, I'm paraphrasing, but we can make the assignments more challenging. I would also say that at least in computer science, we've been evolving that curriculum like every year. It's one of the things I love about being a computer scientist. Like what I teach in my class every year is different because the field is moving so rapidly. And, look at maybe 40, 50 years ago when we were programming in assembly, and then maybe we were doing C, and then maybe Java or something like that. In some ways, the AI is really democratizing the ability to program, right? There is classes of folks I was at a lecture at Georgetown where there was a lawyer who teaches Python for lawyers, right? And like he's actually using AI to get these lawyers who are non-technical to do like really advanced analytics programming using AI, which to me was a bit of an epiphany where I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I'm trying to put a positive spin on it.
Okay. And I think there is something about what's underlying is it sounds like students need to understand the nature of a question. And how to actually ask the right questions, whether it's about a text or about a task, and what component parts are, and whether you ask it of your faculty member or you ask it of a chat GPT. How do you ask the right question, understand the task? And yet at the same time, if we think about, to use your example, lawyers are now teaching programming. Programming is moving and accelerating. That does bring up questions of the other important thing for our students, especially as they look 4 years ahead, is what will they be doing afterwards? And it's a very real question for our students, for our parents, and for those who are trying to support them here, which is broadly, how should we imagine or reshape some of our curricular pedagogy to prepare students for a workforce that's changing? Some of you asked about creative fields, journalism, photography, other areas where we're seeing content changes in generation, but you also gestured towards the democratization of programming knowledge, that going simply into learning programming no longer may be the automatic route to a six-figure job as soon as you leave. It may still be, but it may require different things. So how do we rethink that in terms of the practical needs of our students who are entering next week and will leave in 4 years and want to not only make a difference, but have a job?
I'll speak from the perspective of the Fowler College of Business, where I'm very proud that we've been thinking about this for a while. And I think the answer is that AI has to become part of the toolkit of every modern information worker or business worker of the future, just like Excel did. When Excel came out, it's like unthinkable now that you're not using Excel like on the daily for everything from, and I think we're just there. And, we made AI a core part of MBA curriculum like a few years ago now, and we've just been building on it and adding on it because the expectation in business to be competitive is that you're competitive. And we know that through research that's looked at some of the improvements, that you get at least 30% productivity enhancement, whether you're an expert or a novice using AI tools. And so if somebody's using those tools and you're not, they're going to get the job is, basically the message. But there's no reason to be sad about that. We just teach those tools. And there's a lot of cool ones and they're innovating and they're changing a lot right now. I would say now maybe feels a little more frenetic than it's going to be. It's going to stabilize. It's actually slowing down. This idea of like constant change and getting massive changes to AI and improvements, we're starting to see, even if you add thousands of more servers, you're hitting a certain scaling threshold. And so I think we're going to get a little bit of a breather at least. It's not going to be like a moving target. So the tools is what we're really focusing on, like always.
And I would say that we need to teach students to be flexible, to learn, so that the economy and jobs are going to change. And if we're training students for the jobs of today, we're not educating them for the jobs of tomorrow. And so we need to teach them tools, but we also need to teach them to think critically about how and why they use tools, the longer histories and perhaps even philosophies of those tools, right? And what those tools are doing for them or perhaps not. Like, when might you not use a tool? Or what kind of tool? What is a pencil versus a calculator versus AI, for example? In other words, I think just like the elite private schools focus on teaching students to read, write, think, communicate, and also to listen to differing opinions and information that they don't necessarily like, to be able to synthesize, that is the education that I think can go with students in whatever job or jobs more likely they're going to face in the future.
I wanted to add just one thing that's interesting. If you think about it, the first AI degree at the undergraduate level in the entire United States only appeared in 2018. Just let that sink in. Less than a decade ago, no one studied this in the kind of formalized sense. We absolutely did. We don't know what the next 8 years will bring, but learning those methodologies of thinking, of breaking down a problem, of using tools. We've been doing that since arguably the Stone Age. In that sense, how are you dealing with it in computer science, which it seems to be the space or the lifeblood for some of this work?
I mean, absolutely in computer science, we still make the students, at least at the beginning, take a lot of fundamentals. They're taking all the, courses of linear algebra, and they're saying, how the heck does this, matter to me at all, right? And then, we build them up to do, linear regression and optimization stuff, and, there's all this stuff underneath in terms of how these systems are actually built. And I think, beyond the sort of argument of like, well, we're building critical thinkers, folks that can think logically, so on and so forth, I think there's a ton of work, in this space, right? Everything from, the art, we talk about GPUs, right? So these are, wide instruction machines, right? That are really good at doing like linear algebra type operations, right? And that's computer architecture, that's hardware, that's silicon, and we teach, a bunch of that stuff, right? And we teach all of the, other pieces of this at this school that are very complementary, I feel, right? So for instance, the power consumption is something that gets talked about a ton, right? So how do we make this, all this computation that we're doing more efficient, either algorithmically or through better hardware, right? And then, of course, all the privacy and security issues. For me, it's like a broken record. It's like I've heard this stuff before in other contexts, so now we're doing like red teaming of AI, right? And we used to red team other systems. And so there's all these issues of privacy, and when we issue a query to the LLM, is it learning from me, right? How private is that? And how do I have provenance? How can I watermark things? So on and so forth. All of those, the cybersecurity community has done for years and years and years. Some of the attacks and the jailbreaks you may have heard about, stuff like that, against these AI systems. People are trying to break these systems all the time. Much of this is, new, but also not new. And so I think in CS we're teaching a lot of that to our students. And just like my colleagues, the curriculum in CS has, changed rapidly.
Yeah, and so I'll make one quick comment, but then I'm going to take a break again, so if you want to ready your hand. One of the things that strikes me about all this is distinguishing between focusing on the enduring questions as the tools evolve. The enduring skills of understanding what knowledge is, how do we conceptualize a problem, how do we engage and critically think a problem, how do we engage with each other as human beings and talk to, and what do we learn about each other? Those will be skills that will endure even as the particular nature of technology changes. And it's a role for us as an institution to build that capacity in our society as well as a technical one. But questions or provocations from y'all? What would you like us to be doing? Sure, just go ahead and yell, and I'll repeat it.
I'm just going to yell at because humans have individual personalities, and it sounds as though robots or your AI creatures are going to be able to have individual personalities. What's to protect us from somebody being evil? I mean, if humans have been evil since the beginning, how are we going to protect ourselves from that?
Protecting from evil.
Yeah, well, I've seen my reaction is prayer. I'm not being facetious.
Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, there's evil people as well, and we can't stop all evil. And so, I believe, generally speaking, that the robots and the technologies are good because humans are generally good. So yeah, there's going to be situations where applications happen, and we have law enforcement, we have laws, and we can adapt. But I don't think there's anything to be overly fearful about, personalities being intrinsically evil, to be fair.
Could you go into ethical considerations a little bit deeper in terms of the use of AI as a panel?
Sure, absolutely. So how about this? What's the nagging ethical question, or the space where you struggle, or your field struggles, to think through not just the how, but the why.
This is on the ethics, the issue of ethics.
Sure.
Yeah. You know, and we talk a lot about ethics in my AI class, and I actually run a seminar where I have the robot participate. And to be fair, we really focus a little further down the line where I'm actually interested in how we ethically treat robots. You know, they're serving us. They're doing good things for us. We're working in healthcare. We're helping to treat children with bipolar disorder in some of our research. We're helping for companionship. There's a loneliness epidemic. We're looking at education. We're trying to help fill the instruction gap. We have all these students, but we need more instruction. There's robots working tirelessly for us in so many different scenarios. They're doing so many good things. I wonder, like, how many good deeds must a robot do? So we stop talking about it like a movie from the 1980s. I'm wrestling with those questions. We see, like, robot violence, like lighting Waymos on fire or whatever, or we saw a robot that tried an experiment to hitchhike across the US and was decapitated within one state. And
Which state?
The question was which state?
I don't recall at the moment. So I think that we have an evolving conversation about the ethics. You know, what even is a robot? Once it gets intelligent and complex enough, you know, is it not an animal? It's not an inanimate object. It's not a person. Like, what is it and where is its status? Should we be able to work a robot to death? Should it have a day of rest too? Like, I don't know. Just to turn the question around, I think there's some bigger issues that we should be thinking about.
Yeah.
Can I pick
Sure,
up on that? Which is, I think that what's hopeful and beautiful about this is actually it prompts us to think about ethics. I mean, when's the last time that we've been engaged as a society about talking about ethics? And again, just like the term intelligence or human or artificial, the word ethics is not monolithic or objective and true. It's something that is also always evolving and historical and contextual and requires conversation. So the very fact that we're engaged in having a conversation about ethics at this moment in time seems to be a pretty good thing.
And I'll just add one point, because I work a lot with local companies, and Sharp, for example, hospital is like a leader in incorporating AI for patient outcomes. And like the issue of ethics comes up, but it's really corporate ethics.
Right.
And I completely echo that, you know, these businesses were using software, doing whatever they were doing, but they weren't even talking about ethics. And now we want to call it AI ethics, sure. But it's really just corporate and human ethics. And are we using the technology ethically?
Sure. Looks like you have wherever you want to go. Yeah.
I have just a simple question, and I wonder if AI can give me the answer to what are the odds of something that happened to me about 25 years ago in San Francisco. And I'm a journalist, and I was working on a story there, and I came out of my hotel one morning, and I felt the back of my head, and I said, I need a haircut. I'm just looking too ragged. And I looked down the street, and I saw a barber pole. So I went in, and there were 4 or 5 people in chairs, and there was an empty chair. And I sat in it. They put a sheet over me and started cutting. And then I heard a voice coming from about 3 or 4 chairs down, and I didn't dare look because I didn't want to lose an ear. And I said, Roger Smith, not his real name, but Roger Smith, is that you from San Diego State? And Roger said, John Martin, my God, it's been 20 years since we were in the journalism program together. John, do you live in San Francisco? I said, no, Roger, I live in New York. Do you live in San Francisco? He said, no, I live in Tokyo. Can AI tell me the odds of that happening?
Yes, but there's no guarantee it would be right. But I do think this gets to the question of what are we asking the answers to AI to give? It will give you a number. It will answer that question for you.
Yep.
Whether that answer is accurate, much less true in the way of the ethics, the kind of elevated level of truth or grace or any of those things. That That's a fundamentally human conversation that needs to be had, and an important one, and an enduring one. You look like
Yes,
you've got...
there was a segment on 60 Minutes last week, and I think the question very similar to yours was asked about what protections do you have if you want to do something bad to someone else with respect to AI.
Oh, yeah.
He did not have an answer, and he was the Nobel Prize winner for AI. And so this is something that, of course, in warfare, you may be using AI in warfare, and you want to be able to do some bad things to the enemy. But one of my questions would be, if I'm correct, aren't there all sorts of different AI platforms out there?
There are.
How do you know which one to use? And is it reasonable to believe that you're going to get different answers from different platforms?
Interesting question.
You will definitely get different answers from different platforms. This is like one way that they, try to compete, in fact, right? They'll claim that one is better than the other. And, certainly lots of researchers poke at these different ones. I would just interject really quickly on this question that both you and the other audience member had, that like one of the things that resonated with me was I went to a Department of Energy talk, and the person basically made the analogy between AI and the discovery of nuclear fusion, right? And saying like this has the potential for great good and the potential for great bad, and we've like come up with a bunch of things to try to, both policy and technical, to try to balance the good and the bad. And I think that's kind of what's happening in this space as well, is what I would offer there.
Yeah.
Let's suppose we ask the AI a very practical question. What is the best therapy for a given kind of cancer? Can you program the answer so that it parses out quackery and ignores internet babble and looks at, say, refereed medical journals as your primary source?
Yes. And in fact, that's what hospitals are doing today.
Yeah.
And then actually, so this is, I guess we also have to make sure not to conflate AI. There's AI like OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Claude, and Grok, and all these different tools. And right now, they sort of just feel like advanced search engines, and they are, right? But the technology has better and stronger uses. And so really, those are generic AIs. And so you're going to get a jack of all trades answer. And so and I'll bring you up Sharp again, this is something they're looking at very deeply, training it on very specific medical data and validating it and optimizing it for it. So yes, that's the answer to that problem of, well, how do I know if I'm getting a good legal question? Well, you got to go to a legally certified AI. It doesn't exist quite yet, but it will.
I have a question in regards to the university itself, in regards to the use of AI, and what's the process in place to look at the cross-section of professors you have at our university, the age gap, the acceptance of AI. What is the university doing to move the idea of AI into the professors? The kids are coming with the idea they want to use it. What are you doing in the university to open up those doors across departments?
They have an expert. Sure.
That's a great question. We have really leaned into incentivizing our faculty. So as I mentioned, one of the goals was to make sure that every student, every major would have an opportunity to have a major class. And working with the provost, Bill Tong, and James Frazee, the vice president and CIO, we developed through our teaching and learning programs not only certificates, but actually different opportunities for faculty to get not only instruction, they're paid for their time, and essentially it's, I think, really creates an opportunity for them to work in a interdisciplinary manner, peer to peer. So we also have very great partnerships, and here I'll give kudos to our Vice President, James Frazee. We're working with, in fact, We had Amazon, we've had working with Microsoft, we're working with Google. We just finished a video, and I'm in the video with Google. Gemini, although I prefer Copilot, don't tell Google that, just because I'm used to it, right? Gemini is great. I don't want to bias anybody here, ChatGPT. But what's interesting here is I think that there are many, and, in terms of education, if you think about it from a corporate perspective, there's a huge advantage to partner with a university. And the way we partner is not one in which we say we're going to give you necessarily X. But I'll give you an example. James developed the survey with his team. We had the largest survey of undergraduate students in the world 2 years ago. We're now implementing for the CSU system, which will be one of the largest surveys of AI use by students and faculty, and that's being implemented right now. So one of our approaches and why industry comes to us is largely because we have been, just like the faculty here, ahead of the curve in how we not only are going to use AI, but we're asking the end users. So we learned a lot from our students because what our students were really concerned about was this notion that faculty would think that they were cheating. Now, Jessica, the way you expressed it, I really was really impressed. We can't go to students with an assumption their ethics are not equivalent to ours, that they're using a tool. I mean, I remember when I was teaching a while back, I remember when Wikipedia was banned, there wasn't even a way to cite it, yet every student was using Wikipedia. You can't ban something that is so, that's being part of the technology of a phone, right? I mean, how often do you respond to somebody on your text and it's really an AI generated, thanks, this is great, see you soon, right? So, we're all using it whether we recognize it or not. So we've embraced it, and it was really refreshing, I have to say, the last 2 days working with department chairs. And you know what? The faculty were saying, the department chairs, we want you to provide more opportunities for us to retrofit our pedagogy because we want to be engaged with our students in the most effective way matter. We want to link them. And this was not simply faculty in computer science or Fowler College of Business. I have to say, many in Cal, because I have this, I'm going to be talking to you about this, really want this because they see the true value is that if you are in the humanities and social sciences and you've enhanced critical thinking skills, but then you have this incredible tool, what a powerful force you'll have coming out with these types of degrees. Because you'll be able to ask the question in a very sophisticated way. And that's going to make you a more powerful candidate in the job market. So, I don't like to use sticks. If anyone knows me, I'm not a big stick person. But I do think incentives work. Like in any type of job market, if you provide the incentive structure and the peer kind of cheerleading, you're going to do far better in adoption. The proof was this last retreat I had, I just was overwhelmed with the excitement of our faculty. I have to say the chairs, not all faculty, but the chairs. But the chairs are the leaders. The chairs are the leaders of every department. And if you get them on board, you really have a formidable group of individuals.
Yep.
Right?
And I should say that we've seen this in our leadership. I will say I had an emotional roller coaster listening to that because, of course, first time the president says, I'm going to need to talk to you about that. But then she reassured me that she doesn't like sticks. So you all can back me up when we hear that. But I think I'll answer that question finally and close with actually an invitation that's built into much of the work we do, that's certainly built into this new AI degree. This AI degree was built not only for classroom learning, but it actually requires an internship. And it's being able to test out our skills, our learning in the real world. And I should say, I think the campus is a part of the real world Two, we have people coming in, we have Amazon's coming in for a general hackathon. The big data program worked with Sharp to think through healthcare analysis. The invitation is, if you see a place for our students and our faculty to be engaged with you, and that doesn't mean you have an exact thing, but maybe you have a question that we haven't answered yet, or that you want to walk through, or you heard just a little bit that you need help with. Your questions are our questions. Your world is a proving ground for our students that provides them the edge to walk into a company that looks against the Carnegie Mellon degree that was dealt with only in a classroom and says, well, you know what, I got a degree like that, I got a marketing degree, I got a cybersecurity degree, whatever it might be, and I did this. And it's fundamentally the public service mission of this university is to be engaged with that kind of work. So I'd invite you to connect with us, to connect with any of the experts around here. And it starts with the questions you didn't get to answer. And I'm sorry we didn't get to answer them, but ask us now. Ask us, what are you doing about this? How can we be connected with that? Because we'll stick around for a while to have questions. But for now, I want to thank my panelists, our conversation. And that's it. We'll be around. Come see us. Thank you so much.